Emily Rivera had always believed that commercial flights were supposed to feel the same routine, predictable, almost boring. The hum of the engines, the faint chatter of passengers settling in, the safety instructions nobody truly watched, and the rhythmic clunk of carry-on bags being crammed into overhead compartments. It was a world she knew well, a world she had lived in since childhood. But on this particular morning, as she took her seat by the window, something in her gut whispered that this flight wouldn't be like any other. The boarding process felt slow, though perhaps that was because Emily was unusually restless. She kept glancing out the window, watching the sunlight flash off the wing. She tapped her foot, not from anxiety, but from instinct, an instinct trained through years of discipline, repetition, and learning to read the sky like a second language. But to everyone else on the plane, she looked like a completely ordinary young woman traveling alone. She wore simple jeans, a hoodie, and a small backpack placed neatly under the seat in front of her. Her dark hair was tied into a loose braid, and she didn't wear anything that hinted at who she really was, or what she had done. The passengers around her paid little attention. A middle-aged businessman beside her was already typing aggressively on his laptop. A group of college students a few rows back were laughing loudly about some inside joke. A toddler somewhere near the front was fussing while a tired mother tried to calm him. Emily blended into all of it, quiet, calm, unremarkable. Exactly how she preferred it. The flight attendant strolled down the aisle with a practiced smile. "Miss, do you need anything before we take off?" Emily shook her head politely. "I'm good, thank you." "All right. Let us know if you need anything." She nodded and returned her attention to the window at first glance. The sky seemed perfectly normal, a bright spread of blue, stretching endlessly, with a few thin clouds drifting lazily across. But Emily's eyes narrowed slightly as she scanned the horizon. There was a faint white streak cutting across the distant blue, barely noticeable to the untrained eye. Contrails. Fast. Once she felt the faintest spark of curiosity. Probably just an air patrol training run, she told herself. Nothing unusual, nothing to think too hard about, but she knew better than anyone that nothing unusual was rarely ever the case when it came to fighter jets. Her mind drifted backhand. Memories she tried every day to tuck away. Memories of dark skies, rapid instructions firing through her headset. Her hands steady on the controls, her voice calm while her heart raced. Memories of flight formations, emergency rescues, coded transmissions, and the single moment that changed everything. The moment she earned a call, sin the world wasn't meant to know. The moment she'd walked away from everything. Blinked the thought away the way a trained professional would. Quickly, cleanly, with practiced control. She had left that world behind. She had every intention of keeping it that way. But fate rarely respects intentions. When the plane lifted off the runway, Emily finally exhaled. She watched the ground shrink beneath them, the fields turning into patterns, the roads into thin lines, the cars into tiny dots. The hum of the engines settled into a soothing rhythm. The businessman beside her was too absorbed in his emails to notice how often Emily's eyes flicked toward the horizon. 30 minutes into the flight, something shifted. A faint vibration, almost imperceptible, ran through the cabin. Not the usual turbulence. Something more controlled, more precise. Emily sat up straighter. She knew that vibration. She had felt it more times than she could count. Thousands of feet up, while flying faster than the speed of sound, the vibration of another aircraft slicing through the air close by. Her pulse quickened. She looked out the window again. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, just for a fraction of a second, metallic flashed past the far corner of her view. Her heart stopped. No way. Commercial flights didn't get military escorts unless something was seriously wrong. But everything on this flight was routine, normal, calm, except the sky wasn't. The businessman sighed next to her, annoyed as if turbulence was interrupting his productivity. The passengers behind her didn't seem to notice anything unusual. But Emily's instinct screamed otherwise. She pressed her hand lightly against the window. Leaning in, the flash appeared again. This time, unmistakable, a fighter jet, glossy, gray, fast, flying, parallel but slightly above the commercial plane. Emily's breath caught in her throat. It wasn't just any fighter jet. It was an F-22 Raptor, the kind of jet reserved for elite-level pilots, the kind of jet that didn't casually appear beside passenger flights, the kind of jet she knew far too well. Her muscles stiffened with recognition and disbelief. What are you doing out here? She thought. The jet didn't move aggressively. It didn't threaten. It simply flew beside them with deliberate precision. As if examining the aircraft, Emily glanced across the cabin. Nobody else saw it. The angle from her window made it almost invisible to everyone else. The jet dipped slightly, aligning its cockpit with her window. She froze. No, this couldn't be real. Slowly, the tinted visor of the fighter pilot's helmet tilted directly toward her. Her pulse hammered in her chest. He sees me. The jet remained steady, its wings slicing through the air with lethal grace. No turbulence disturbing it. Emily felt her throat tighten. This was impossible. No one was supposed to know she was on this flight. She had booked last minute. Her name wasn't publicly flagged anymore, and she lived quietly, unnoticed. So how would an F-22 be tracking her? The jet drifted close enough that she could see the small markings on its fuselage. Markings she recognized instantly. Her breathing went shallow, her hands trembled, but not from fear. From familiarity, from memory, from the kind of connection that no amount of time could erase. Suddenly, the jet pulled slightly ahead, then dipped its nose in a formal motion. A gesture, a signal, a salute. Emily's heart pounded against her ribs so hard it almost hurt. No. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not here. Not in front of civilians. Not after she left everything behind. The businessman beside her finally glanced up, irritated by the change in light filtering through the window. Everything okay over there? Emily didn't look away from the sky. Yeah, just looking. He shrugged and went back to typing. But Emily's world had already changed. Then, without warning, second jet appeared on the opposite side. Another F-22. Her breath left her in a silent gasp. 2 Raptors flying flank on a commercial flight. Impossible, unprecedented. Deliberate. The second jet slowed its pace until its cockpit aligned with her window as well. Emily stared, unable to blink. Then came the moment, silent, surreal, impossible. The pilot in the second jet lifted a gloved hand and tapped 2 fingers against the side of his helmet in a crisp, unmistakable salute. A salute meant only for her. Her skin went cold. A whisper escaped her lips. No way. And then the cabin speakers crackled. The passengers barely reacted. It was a routine announcement. But Emily's blood ran cold at the voice that came next. A voice she recognized. A voice she never thought she'd hear again. A voice that once greeted her through headsets at 30,000 feet. Good afternoon, passengers. This is your captain speaking. But this next message isn't for all of you. Emily's heart stopped. The captain continued. This is for the passenger seated at the window in row 14. Seat A. The businessman beside her's head snapped up. The passengers around her turned sharply, confused and curious. Emily stared straight ahead, frozen. No, please don't. The cabin fell completely silent. Then the voice said, clearly, proudly, deliberately, welcome back to the skies. Call sign, Shadowhawk. Emily stopped breathing. Every passenger around her stared at her with widened eyes, murmuring in disbelief, because the pilot of the commercial plane, the pilots in the fighter jets, and the entire sky around her had just acknowledged the one secret she had sworn never to reveal. Her call sign, the name only elite pilots in the classified program knew, a name that should have died the day she walked away, Shadowhawk, and now the whole plane knew. Emily gripped the armrest, her pulse roaring in her ears. The past she ran from had just found her 30,000 feet up, with nowhere to escape. And it was only the beginning. The commercial plane cruised steadily above the clouds, its engines humming a constant, soothing rhythm. Emily Parker sat in seat 16C, still processing the incredible moment from moments ago. The fighter jet had appeared seemingly out of nowhere, performing a precise flyby just outside her window. She had waved instinctively, thinking it was a routine training exercise or a ceremonial flyover. What she did not expect was for the pilot to call out her name, Emily Parker. Salute confirmed, the voice crackled faintly from the jet's communication system. Emily froze, disbelief washing over her. The words echoed in her mind. The pilot knew her, not just as a passenger, but as someone whose skill and reputation transcended the ordinary. Around her, passengers stared at her window, mouths agape. Some had been filming the flyby, but none of them could capture the full weight of what had just happened. Emily's hand hovered in mid-wave, now frozen in a mix of shock and awe. Rachel, seated beside her, whispered, Did he just call your name? How would he even know it? Emily's gaze remained fixed on the jet, now holding a formation outside the plane. It's not about recognition by chance, she said softly. It's about earned skill, discipline, and trust. Today, that trust is being acknowledged in a way most would never expect. The pilot, sitting in the cockpit of the F-22, mirrored a subtle salute toward Emily. Wings perfectly level as the jet maintained tight formation with the plane. The precision was uncanny, a testament to both the pilot's expertise and the confidence he placed in her. Passengers whispered, some taking shaky videos, others staring in stunned silence. One man murmured, This is impossible. Who gets saluted mid-flight by a fighter jet? Emily's lips curved faintly, calm yet commanding. Recognition is a consequence of mastery and preparation. It is never given lightly. Rachel leaned closer, awe in her eyes. It's like the sky itself bends to your presence. Emily allowed a subtle nod. True authority is reflected in action. Words are irrelevant when trust and skill are evident. Outside the window, the fighter jet performed a loop, then returned to alignment with the plane. Smoke trails painted arcs against the bright sky, providing a vivid backdrop to the silent acknowledgment between pilot and passenger. Emily's heart raced, not from fear, but from the sheer gravity of the recognition. Nearby passengers whispered nervously, Who is she? One asked, Why is a fighter jet doing that for a teen? Emily's gaze softened slightly. Mastery is recognized universally. Discipline and skill communicate beyond words. Today, that communication is visible to everyone on this flight. The jet banked sharply in perfect synchronization with the airplane. Its movements fluid, precise, and almost choreographed. Emily traced the motion with her eyes, analyzing speed, angle, and alignment instinctively, a skill that had been cultivated through countless hours of training, practice, and strategic planning. Rachel shook her head in disbelief. Even I can't process this. The pilot, he's acknowledging you personally. That's insane. Emily's calm voice carried the weight of experience. Recognition comes to those who have prepared, mastered their craft, and earned the trust of those who can respond. Today, that acknowledgement is being made visible. Passengers who had been skeptical moments before were now riveted. Their initial amusement had transformed into awe as they watched the jet perform a subtle salute, its pilot perfectly attuned to Emily's response. The teens who had mocked her earlier were silent, faces pale. One whispered, She's Valkyrie, isn't she? Yes, Emily said quietly, her voice steady. That call sign is not a name, it is a mark of skill, discipline, and earned respect. The acknowledgement you see is a reflection of trust and mastery, not vanity. The F-22 executed another tight maneuver, banking sharply before returning to the same level as the plane. Smoke trails formed elegant arcs, leaving a visual record of the precise coordination between pilot and passenger. Emily returned a subtle salute, a motion that mirrored the jet's. Calm yet commanding, passengers whispered among themselves, astonished. She's commanding the sky, one woman muttered. Rachel whispered, even the pilot can't help but follow. He trusts you completely. Emily's eyes softened slightly. True mastery is silent. Leadership is demonstrated through actions and trust. Recognition will always follow naturally. The jet now hovered briefly beside the plane, the cockpit's open canopy giving a clear view of the pilot, who nodded subtly, acknowledging her calm composure and skill. The passengers were captivated. No video or photo could fully convey the tension, precision, and mutual respect displayed in that moment. Minutes passed, the jet performing loops and small formations beside the plane, each movement precise, deliberate, and respectful. Emily remained seated, calm and composed, her posture perfect, her eyes locked on the aerial ballet. The captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are witnessing a rare acknowledgment from an elite fighter jet pilot to one of our passengers. Please remain seated and enjoy this once-in-a-lifetime event." Emily's calm smile was faint, but present. Recognition was never her goal. Mastery and trust were. Today, the pilot's salute was simply a reflection of the preparation, skill, and earned trust that Emily had cultivated over years. As the jet performed its final maneuver, Emily lowered her hand from the salute, calm and composed. The pilot gave a final nod, then peeled away into the distance. Passengers erupted into whispers of amazement. Some clapping quietly, others filming, all processing the extraordinary event they had just witnessed. Rachel turned to her, voice trembling with awe. "Emily, you just got personally saluted by an F-22 mid. No one else on this plane will ever forget this." Emily allowed a small, serene smile. Mastery and trust endure. Recognition is temporary, but the skill and discipline that earned it are eternal. The teen in 16C had just experienced an acknowledgment that transcended words. The fighter jet had recognized her not as a passenger, but as someone who had earned respect, authority, and recognition, silently, calmly, and flawlessly. The plane continued to cruise steadily, its engines humming steadily as it soared above the clouds. Emily Parker, in seat 16C, sat calm and composed, her eyes fixed on the F-22 fighter jet that now hovered just outside the window. Passengers still stared in awe, their initial murmurs of curiosity and skepticism long replaced by silence and wonder. The pilot, recognizing Emily's call sign as Valkyrie, maintained perfect formation with the commercial aircraft, executing intricate maneuvers that displayed both skill and respect. The moment was tense, yet electrifying, a rare acknowledgment that transcended ordinary flight procedures. Rachel, seated beside Emily, whispered, "I can't believe he knows your name. And he's saluting you like that." Emily's gaze remained focused. It isn't about being noticed. Recognition comes as a result of mastery, trust, and discipline. The pilot is responding to that, not to me personally. Passengers craned their necks to observe the display. A mother whispered to her child, This is incredible. Look at her, even the pilots follow her lead." The jet executed a series of loops and rolls, smoke trails marking precise geometric patterns in the sky. Emily's hand lifted slightly, mirroring a subtle salute back toward the cockpit, calm and assured. Every passenger felt the weight of the silent communication. This was not a show for entertainment, but a display of earned authority. A teen, previously laughing and mocking, leaned toward his friend. She's Valkyrie, right? I've read about her. They say she's unstoppable." Emily's voice, calm and quiet, carried subtle authority. Titles mean little without skill. The salute you witness is given because mastery and trust demand acknowledgement. The pilot executed a synchronized banking maneuver, positioning the fighter jet parallel to the plane. The precision was breathtaking, demonstrating not just technical skill, but also a deep understanding of Emily's expectations. Every movement reflected trust. He trusted that she would respond correctly. She trusted that he would follow flawlessly. Passengers held their breath. Phones clicked, videos were recorded, but no device could capture the full weight of the moment. Emily remained composed, her eyes tracking the jet as if it were an extension of her own will. Rachel whispered, "Even I can't process this. The jet is practically performing for you." Emily nodded subtly. Mastery communicates silently. Leadership is reflected in trust, discipline, and preparation. Recognition is merely a consequence. The F-22 climbed vertically, then executed a tight loop, aligning perfectly with the airplane window once more. The pilot gave a subtle nod, acknowledging Emily's calm and confident presence. Passengers murmured, some clapping quietly, others whispering in disbelief. A man whispered, "How is this possible?" A passenger commanding respect from a fighter pilot mid-flight. Emily's gaze softened slightly. Mastery is universal. Discipline and skill communicate beyond words, and today, they are being recognized by those who can respond to them. The pilot performed a series of synchronized rolls with the jet's wingmen, their smoke trails painting elegant arcs across the sky. Emily followed every movement with precision, noting angles, speed, and alignment instinctively, skills developed over years of training, dedication, and careful preparation. Rachel leaned closer. "Even I can't believe how perfectly coordinated this is. You've trained them so well that they respond without hesitation." Emily's calm eyes remained locked on the jets. Trust is earned through preparation and discipline. Leadership is demonstrated, not demanded. Today, the pilot's actions reflect that trust. Passengers watched in awe, whispering among themselves. The teens who had mocked Emily before were silent, faces pale. One whispered, "She really is Valkyrie." The stories were true. "Yes," Emily said softly. "Valkyrie is not a name, it's a testament to skill, discipline, and earned respect. The acknowledgment you witness is a reflection of those qualities." The aerial display intensified. The jets performed vertical climbs, rolls, and synchronized banking maneuvers, smoke trails forming perfect arcs against the sky. Emily's hand lifted slightly again. A calm salute acknowledging the pilot and reinforcing her silent authority. Passengers gasped, whispered, and recorded the scene, mesmerized. Rachel whispered, "You've completely changed everyone's perception. Even the pilots follow your lead instinctively." Emily nodded subtly. True mastery is silent. Recognition will always follow naturally, but skill and trust endure. The F-22 now hovered closer to the plane, the cockpit canopy clearly visible. The pilot nodded once more, a gesture of respect, acknowledging Emily's poise, expertise, and earned authority. Passengers were captivated, fully aware that what they were witnessing was beyond ordinary comprehension. Minutes passed as the jets continued, intricate maneuvers beside the airplane, loops, vertical climbs, and precise formations created a mesmerizing display. Smoke trails tracing arcs across the blue sky. Emily remained calm, her posture perfect, her eyes locked on the aerial ballet. The captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are witnessing a rare acknowledgment from an elite fighter jet pilot to one of our passengers. Please remain seated and enjoy this once-in-a-lifetime event." Emily allowed a faint, serene smile. Recognition was not her goal. Mastery and trust were. Today, the pilot's salute reflected preparation, skill, and earned respect. As the jet performed its final loop and aligned once more with the plane, Emily lowered her hand from the salute, calm and composed. The pilot gave a final nod, then peeled away, leaving behind the lingering trails of smoke as testament to skill, trust, and silent authority. Passengers erupted into whispers of awe, some clapping, others filming. Rachel turned to Emily, voice trembling with admiration. "You just got personally acknowledged by an F-22 mid-flight. No one on this plane will ever forget this." Emily smiled faintly. Memory fades, but trust, skill, and discipline endure. That is what matters. The teen in seat 16C had just experienced an acknowledgment that transcended words, a silent, precise, and commanding recognition from one of the most elite fighter pilots in the Air Force. The airplane hummed steadily, cruising above an endless sea of clouds. Yet the atmosphere inside seat 16C had shifted dramatically. Emily Parker, seated calmly, radiated a quiet authority that even the passengers around her could sense. The fighter jets outside were no longer just spectacular machines, they were extensions of her silent command. The lead F-22 hovered close to the plane, perfectly aligned, its pilot maintaining flawless formation. Emily's eyes tracked every subtle motion, hand lifting in a precise, calm salute that reflected trust, discipline, and the unspoken understanding between pilot and passenger. Rachel, seated beside her, whispered, "I don't think anyone on this flight truly understands what's happening. They're not just flying by, they're following you." Emily's calm gaze never wavered from the jets. Authority is recognized in the sky the same way it is anywhere else. Mastery, preparation, and trust manifest in action. Recognition is simply a natural consequence. The lead jet performed a tight loop, followed by the synchronized maneuvers of its wingmen. Smoke trails painted elegant arcs across the sky, visible even through the airplane windows. Emily tracked each movement with precise attention, calculating trajectory, speed, and alignment almost instinctively. Every action, every subtle tilt of the jet, reflected the trust the pilots had placed in her. A trust built not in words, but in preparation, skill, and proven competence. Passengers whispered among themselves, astonished. "She's commanding the sky," one muttered. Emily's lips curved faintly. Mastery does not seek recognition. Recognition follows naturally when skill and trust are evident. A mother leaned toward her child. "Look at her. She doesn't even need to speak." They follow her lead instinctively. The F-22 pilot gave a subtle nod, acknowledging Emily's calm composure and confident presence. The jets now performed a synchronized vertical climb, then a series of rapid rolls and banking maneuvers. Smoke trails intertwined in geometric patterns, mesmerizing every passenger aboard. Rachel whispered in disbelief. "It's like the sky bends to her authority." Emily allowed herself a faint nod. True leadership is demonstrated, not announced. Trust and skill communicate louder than words ever could. The teens who had mocked Emily earlier now sat in stunned silence, their previous laughter replaced with awe. One whispered softly, "She really is Valkyrie." The stories were true. "Yes," Emily said quietly, her voice calm, yet commanding. "Valkyrie is not just a name, it is a symbol of mastery, discipline, and earned respect. Today, it is reflected in these pilots' actions." The aerial display intensified. The jets executed synchronized loops, rolls, and high-speed banks that tested the limits of both aircraft and pilots. Smoke trails formed intricate arcs and geometric patterns against the bright blue sky. Emily maintained perfect composure, her hand rising subtly to acknowledge the pilot's skill and trust. Passengers leaned forward in awe, some filming, some simply staring. Rachel whispered, "Even I can't believe how perfectly coordinated this is." "They're responding to you instinctively." Emily's calm eyes remained fixed. Trust is earned through discipline and preparation. Leadership is not declared, it is demonstrated. Recognition naturally follows those who have proven themselves. The jets now formed a tight diamond pattern around the airplane. Each maneuver, each roll, each smoke trail reflected a conversation of skill and trust between Emily and the pilots. Passengers gasped, whispered, and occasionally clapped softly. Captivated by the seamless display, the lead F-22 hovered briefly. Cockpit visible, the pilot giving a final subtle nod acknowledging Emily's presence. The teens who had doubted her earlier whispered among themselves. "I never imagined she could command that kind of respect," one admitted. Emily allowed a faint smile. Mastery transcends age, appearance, or expectation. Trust, skill, and discipline communicate universally. Minutes passed as the jets performed increasingly complex maneuvers. Vertical climbs, tight rolls, and synchronized banking movements created a mesmerizing aerial ballet. The passengers' awe deepened with each maneuver. The teens who had previously mocked her, now completely silent. Expressions of humility and wonder etched across their faces. Rachel whispered softly, "Everyone on this plane will remember this forever. You've completely redefined what's possible." Emily nodded subtly. Inspiration is secondary. True mastery and earned trust endure long after the moment has passed. That is what matters. The lead jet performed a final roll and aligned perfectly with the airplane. The pilot giving a subtle salute. Emily mirrored it flawlessly, calm and composed, commanding authority without a single word. Passengers were mesmerized. Whispers of awe echoing throughout the cabin. The jets executed one last synchronized maneuver. Smoke trails, painting arcs, and geometric patterns that stretched across the sky. The airplane captain's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, you are witnessing a rare acknowledgment from elite fighter jet pilots for one of our passengers. Please remain seated and enjoy this extraordinary display. Emily returned her notebook to her bag, serene. Recognition was not her goal. Mastery and trust were paramount. The salute from the pilots was a reflection of preparation, discipline, and earned respect as the jets peeled away. Leaving delicate trails in the sky, passengers erupted into whispers of amazement. Some clapped quietly, some filmed the final moments, and all absorbed the significance of what had just occurred. Rachel turned to Emily, voice trembling with admiration. You just got personally acknowledged by F-22 pilots mid-flight. No one on this plane will ever forget this. Emily allowed a faint, serene smile. Memory fades, but trust, skill, and discipline endure. That is the legacy of mastery. The teen in seat 16C had experienced an acknowledgment that transcended words, a silent, precise, and commanding recognition from one of the most elite fighter pilots in the world. The ordinary flight had been transformed into an unforgettable lesson in leadership, skill, and earned authority. The airplane continued to cruise above the endless sea of clouds. But the atmosphere inside the cabin of seat 16C was electric. Emily Parker sat calmly, composed, and confident. As if nothing extraordinary had happened, yet everything around her told a different story. Outside, the F-22 fighter jets had returned for a final formation, their smoke trails painting elaborate arcs across the sky. Passengers were on the edge of their seats, whispers filling the cabin as everyone tried to comprehend what was unfolding. Those who had laughed at Emily earlier now sat pale-faced, awestruck. The ordinary teen in seat 16C had become the epicenter of a rare acknowledgment. The pilot's salute and call-out were no ordinary gestures. They were a recognition of skill, trust, and silent authority. Rachel leaned closer, barely able to whisper. I've never seen anything like this. Not even in videos. Following your lead, Emily's eyes were calm, unwavering. True mastery commands respect without words. Trust and discipline communicate louder than any voice ever could. The lead F-22 hovered in perfect alignment with the airplane window. Cockpit open just enough for the pilot to nod subtly. Emily raised her hand in a precise, calm salute, mirroring the pilot's gesture. Each movement of the jet, each smoke trail, every synchronized maneuver was a conversation of skill and trust between Emily and the elite pilots. Passengers whispered among themselves, some recording on phones, others simply staring. One man murmured, "She's commanding the sky like she owns it." Emily allowed herself a faint smile. Mastery is not about command. It is about demonstrated skill and earned trust. Recognition is merely a reflection of that mastery. The jets began an intricate aerial display, performing synchronized loops, banking maneuvers, and vertical climbs. Smoke trails intertwined to form geometric patterns in the bright sky. Emily's calm gaze followed every trajectory, her hand occasionally rising in subtle acknowledgement of the pilots. Precision. The teens who had mocked her earlier were now completely silent. Expressions a mixture of awe, shock, and humility. One whispered, I didn't believe the stories. She really is Valkyrie." "Yes," Emily said softly, her voice calm and commanding. "Valkyrie is not just a name. It is a testament to mastery, discipline, and earned respect. What you witness is not a spectacle for attention. It is the natural acknowledgement of those principles." The aerial ballet intensified. The jets formed a diamond around the airplane, weaving in perfect synchronization. Vertical rolls, tight loops, and coordinated banking maneuvers left trails of smoke that shimmered against the blue sky. Emily followed every move, analyzing angles and speeds instinctively, a skill honed over years of training and preparation. Passengers whispered nervously, some clapping quietly, others filming. "She's controlling them," one whispered. "It's like the sky itself bends to her presence." Emily's lips curved faintly. Leadership is demonstrated, not demanded. Trust and skill communicate universally. Recognition is a natural consequence. The pilot in the lead jet gave a subtle, final nod. Emily returned the salute flawlessly, calm and composed. The cabin was quiet, filled with the weight of awe and understanding. Every passenger sensed that this was more than a mere flyby. It was a lesson in authority, discipline, and mastery witnessed firsthand. Rachel whispered, "Everyone on this plane will remember this for the rest of their lives. You've completely rewritten what's possible." Emily nodded subtly. Memory fades, but trust, skill, and discipline endure. That is the essence of mastery. The jets performed one last synchronized maneuver, smoke trails forming arcs and loops that seemed to stretch across the entire horizon. The captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, you are witnessing a rare acknowledgment from elite fighter jet pilots for one of our passengers. Please remain seated and enjoy this extraordinary, once-in-a-lifetime experience." Emily returned her notebook to her bag, serene and poised. Recognition had never been her goal. Mastery and trust were paramount. The salute and acknowledgement from the pilots reflected years of preparation, discipline, and earned authority. As the F-22s peeled away, leaving behind lingering smoke trails as testimony to skill and coordination, passengers erupted in whispers and quiet applause. Cameras clicked, phones recorded, and eyes remained fixed on the sky. Emily's calm composure contrasted with the awe surrounding her, a silent reminder of the power of preparation, skill, and earned trust. Rachel turned to her, voice trembling, "Emily, you just got personally acknowledged mid-flight by F-22 pilots. Everyone here will never forget this." Emily allowed a faint, serene smile. Inspiration is fleeting, but mastery endures. Trust, discipline, and skill leave a legacy that lasts far longer than a single moment. The teens who had doubted her earlier now approached quietly, their expressions a mix of humility and awe. One whispered, I was wrong. You are incredible." Emily's calm gaze met theirs. Doubt is natural. Respect and recognition are earned through preparation, skill, and discipline. That is the lesson here. The airplane began its descent, but the magic of the moment lingered. Outside, the sky was clear, the smoke trails of the jets shimmering faintly against the horizon. The ordinary flight had become extraordinary, a lesson in leadership, skill, and authority that no passenger would ever forget. Emily Parker, the teen in seat 16C, had transformed from an ordinary passenger into a symbol of silent authority and earned respect. The fighter jets had saluted her not because of her age, appearance, or words, but because she had mastered her craft and earned their trust. As the plane touched down safely, passengers erupted into quiet applause and whispers of awe. Phones were lowered, cameras clicked off, but the impression left behind was permanent. The story of Emily Parker Valkyrie would live on in the memories of everyone aboard, a testament to skill, trust, and quiet authority above the clouds.